It's very easy for casting directors to say, yeah, we know Judge, and we know that's Billy Rosewood, and that's who he is. And
it was all about the look, the rhythm, and that specific vibe. Judge Reinhold perfectly captured that era. He had a natural gift for comedy and landed roles in massive blockbusters. Yet, he eventually stepped away, leaving fans curious about his disappearance. Today, we are finally going to solve that mystery. Whatever happened to Judge Reinhold? Let's look at his roots and that famous moniker. He was born Edward Ernest Reinhold Jr. on May 21, 1957, in Wilmington, Delaware. Curiously, this particular town is also the birthplace of Elizabeth Shue. His father, Edward Sr., worked as a litigator after graduating from Harvard Law. His family moved frequently during his youth, traveling from Delaware to Fredericksburg. He attended classes at Virginia's Deku, with his James Monroe High before relocating to Martin County, Florida, just before his 11th grade year. That Judge handle originated with his dad. Only 2 weeks after the birth, Edward Sr. saw the infant's remarkably intense expression and joked that he mirrored a colleague from the courtroom. That moniker became so iconic that most people have absolutely no clue his real name is Edward. Once high school was over, he pursued a theater degree in college, enrolling at Mary Washington and later Palm Beach State, which was a junior college at the time. He also refined his skills at the North Carolina School of the Arts, a top-tier conservatory for serious performers. Entering show business before his graduation really highlighted the restless, high-octane drive he possessed as a youth. It speaks volumes about his self-assurance. You do not just stumble into a prestigious conservatory like that by accident. It takes intense auditions and a rock-solid dedication to the craft of performance. Reinhold arrived there with a hunger for work and left with the tools to succeed. His professional debut occurred in 1979, playing Jeff Gordon in an episode of the Wonder Woman series. While it was just a minor role, it was a crucial milestone for a rookie trying to break in. He moved from a lead in 1980's Running Scared to a 1981 hit called Stripes with Bill Murray. Stripes became a massive hit, putting Reinhold right in the center of a cultural revolution. Still, nothing could have prepared the world for his 1982 breakthrough. Fast Times at Ridgemont High changed the game. For a whole generation, seeing that movie for the first time is a core memory. Directed by Amy Heckerling from a Cameron Crowe script, the film redefined teen movies by being unapologetically honest. While Sean Penn was iconic as Spicoli, the entire cast was stacked with future legends like Phoebe Cates, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Nicolas Cage, and Forrest Whitaker. And right in the mix was Judge Reinhold as Brad Hamilton. Brad is just a high school senior trying to juggle lousy jobs while his personal life falls apart. He is not the hero or the cool rebel with all the answers. He is just a regular teenager trying his best, played with a warmth that made him immediately relatable. Reinhold nailed the physical gags and the heart-wrenching moments with equal skill. He later joked that he expected superstardom, only to watch Sean Penn become the breakout icon instead. It was a humble joke, but it captured the truth about how unpredictable Hollywood can be. That ensemble was so strong that everyone's career took a very different path afterward. The movie's reputation has only improved over decades. By the year 2000, the AFI ranked it among the top 100 comedies. In 2005, the Library of Congress even selected it for permanent preservation. Despite feeling like luck skipped him over, Reinhold's name became forever synonymous with an absolute 80s classic. That movie effectively branded him as a rock-solid talent with some serious comedic chops. He was a name that stayed on every casting list, and in 1984, that led to a major opportunity. Hollywood vultures circled this project until it transformed from a Stallone thriller into a legendary comedy classic. Originally a gritty 1984 Stallone vehicle, the production already featured Judge Reinhold as the iconic Detective Rosewood. When Stallone bailed to film Cobra, the movie shifted gears entirely to accommodate Eddie Murphy's energy. A gritty thriller transformed into a comedy classic, and Rosewood, the sheltered local officer tasked with shadowing a motor-mouthed Detroit detective, became a legendary sidekick for that era. The spark between Murphy and Reinhold was instant. Murphy provided the high-energy chaos. Reinhold provided the deadpan sincerity that made the whole dynamic work. Rosewood was never just a punchline. He was a decent cop who actually respected Axel Foley, making him incredibly endearing. Beverly Hills Cop landed in 1984 and absolutely dominated the box office, crushing heavy hitters like Ghostbusters and Indiana Jones. It was a massive cultural shift. The Library of Congress eventually archived both movies, marking them as essential pieces of American culture and history. Reinhold anchored that legacy, playing Rosewood again in the 1987 and 1994 sequels. Billy was never just a simple sidekick. He breathed real soul into the part, giving Rosewood a personal moral compass and a devotion that ignored red tape. That authenticity is exactly why fans fell in love with him. He made a supporting part feel as iconic as the lead. There is actually a strange story about how he got the gig. He actually inked his deal for the action flick before Eddie Murphy was even on the radar. He signed up for a movie with zero star power, but then Murphy joined, and the whole vibe shifted. That backstory makes the franchise's growth even more fascinating. It was quite the roller coaster. The mid-80s treated Reinhold well, leading to headlining gigs in films like Head Office and Offbeat. While those movies did not exactly set the world on fire, they proved he was viewed as a legitimate lead. In 1986, he joined the hilarious crime comedy Ruthless People, alongside legends like Danny DeVito. He played a clumsy stereo clerk named Ken who gets tangled up in a kidnapping mess. The movie was a hit and proved he could stand toe-to-toe with the biggest names in the business. At the time, he was everywhere on magazine covers and late-night shows as the next big thing in comedy. Everything seemed to be moving up, even if every movie was not a home run. People knew his name. He reached that rare status, where folks would buy a ticket just because he was on the poster. That elite status did not last long, especially after 1988's body swap flick, Vice Versa. Even back then, the father-son body swap trope was totally exhausted, and the movie debuted in a market already drowning in identical stories. It was a complete dud. Reinhold is remarkably open about the fallout and his personal responsibility for the crash. He flatly stated that the situation signaled the final curtain call for his A-list status. That was the exact moment the industry ghosted him, but he's just as transparent about the cause. He owned up to being a spoiled, ego-driven, and incredibly difficult diva back then. He gained a reputation for being a nightmare on set, and by his own admission, he earned it. He wasn't afraid to own his past, confessing that his ego was completely out of control and that he genuinely deserved his status as a nightmare to work with. Such raw vulnerability is nearly impossible to find in a business where everyone points fingers when things fail. Instead of making excuses, Reinhold pointed the blame inward. He retreated to Santa Fe, New Mexico, spending those years navigating a brutal and necessary season of self-inventory. In recent talks, he mentioned how owning his failures and cleaning up his messes triggered a fundamental shift that took a lifetime to fully process. He speaks about his evolution using the language of an actual soul-deep change rather than some hollow, calculated Hollywood PR stunt. He methodically repaired his reputation and the hearts he broke, doing the hard work to change his nature. The man who finally emerged was far more reserved, purposeful, and, by every measure, a much kinder human being to have around. It is funny to think his whole acting journey started just because he wanted to impress a girl in 10th grade. By the 90s, he was back at it, taking various roles in smaller projects and on the small screen. He kept busy with titles like Rosalie Goes Shopping and Daddy's Dyin', Who's Got the Will. These were not massive hits, but he was earning his keep and finding a new sense of peace. 1994 was a massive year, featuring his return to the Beverly Hills Cop series to join Eddie Murphy once again. That same year, he landed a spot in the holiday favorite The Santa Claus with Tim Allen. He portrayed Dr. Neil Miller, the clumsy but kind new husband of Alan's ex, essentially becoming the movie's primary comic relief. This box office smash served as Reinhold's formal introduction to a brand new demographic that had never even heard of his classic 80s comedies. He stepped back into that familiar part for 2 follow-up films in 2002 and 2006, while also finding a steady groove in television work. Back in 1994, his appearance on Seinfeld as the man who hovered way too close to Jerry's parents earned him the permanent title of the Close Talker. That performance is still considered one of the funniest one-off roles in television history. Even though the character was just a minor bit, his earnest and clueless performance created a legendary series highlight. Looking back, this role signaled a major professional pivot from 1980s stardom toward a much more adaptable approach. He showed a new comfort with supporting parts, betting that a standout cameo in a hit sitcom beats a mediocre film. That Seinfeld appearance remains far more iconic today than the movies he fronted following Beverly Hills Cop or Arrested Development. While Seinfeld proved he was fine being the punchline, his work on Arrested Development pushed that self-deprecating vibe into surreal territory. In that cult favorite series, he actually played a ridiculous, heightened version of himself. Playing a fictional version of himself on the show, he led a courtroom spoof titled Mock Trial with Judge Reinhold, leaning into the hilarious irony of an actor named Judge portraying a judge. This self-referential comedy fit the show's quirky vibe perfectly, and Reinhold dove into the bit without a hint of ego. His guest spot during the mid-2000s really highlighted his personal growth and where he stood at that point in his life. He moved past the need to carefully curate his reputation or demand specific high-status characters. Embracing a version of himself that was totally ridiculous and belittled showed he had a blast, a move many insecure actors would be too terrified to pull off. Because he made it look so easy, it was clear he'd spent the prior decade doing some serious soul-searching. Let's look at his private life, from that initial marriage and the lean years to finding the love that saved him. On November 1st, 1985, he tied the knot with casting director Carrie Fraser, though they split less than a year later in 1986 with no kids. While his career was hitting its absolute zenith, he admits he was simultaneously at his lowest point as a human being. After Vice Versa bombed, things got rough both at home and on set, prompting a move to Santa Fe for some deep reflection. He tackled some ugly personal truths before spotting Amy Miller at a packed Los Angeles bash in the late 90s, though she slipped away before he could say hello. He actually trailed her car, used his social circle to find her, and they were wed just 6 months later on January 8, 2000, in Scott, Arkansas. He describes her as his real-world anchor, comparing her loyalty to the bond Billy Rosewood shares with Axel Foley. He frankly admits he'd be completely adrift without her. Meanwhile, Amy, a Little Rock native, has made her own mark as a screenwriter. The couple collaborated on a book and project called Be Still, which Reinhold eventually narrated for a DVD release. They settled down in Little Rock, specifically choosing to ditch the high-pressure environment of Los Angeles for good. Walking away from Tinseltown wasn't a retreat for him, but a life choice he talks about with zero second thoughts. Los Angeles gave him fame only to claw it back, whereas Arkansas provided a life where character mattered more than just another credit on a resume. In February 2013, their little girl, Haley Rose Reinhold, arrived, but soon came a messy airport scandal and its very public fallout. At 59 years old, in December 2016, he found himself in handcuffs at Dallas Love Field for a disorderly conduct charge. After his luggage set off an alarm during the security check, TSA agents insisted on a physical pat-down. He didn't take it well, arguing with staff and reportedly stripping off his shirt while shouting insults during the heated exchange. He spent the night in a Dallas jail cell, but the way he handled the situation afterward revealed a lot about his character. He put out a formal apology without making a single excuse, calling those 48 hours the most bizarre and shameful 2 days he'd ever lived through. Beyond apologizing to the Dallas cops, he mentioned a bad reaction to some respiratory meds, though he refused to use that as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Feeling deeply embarrassed, he cited his long-standing respect for police since the Beverly Hills cop days, despite the charge only being a minor Class C misdemeanor. He took a deal for deferred adjudication, meaning the whole thing would vanish from his record after 90 days. No permanent conviction stuck, but it was a lapse in judgment that he owned up to entirely. For a guy who'd spent his 30s learning accountability, this incident must have felt like a haunting reminder of his younger, messier self. Yet, his upfront attitude and lack of PR spin proved that the man who found himself in Santa Fe was still standing strong. Some people get it right the first time, while others have to keep practicing, and he clearly knows that self-improvement is a marathon, leading right into Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. In 2024, he stepped back into the iconic role that originally catapulted him to stardom. Directed by Mark Malloy, Axel F. hit Netflix on July 3, 2024, reuniting Eddie Murphy, John Ashton, and Bronson Pinchot. Reinhold reprised his role as Billy Rosewood, now a seasoned private investigator. Despite leaving the force, he remains the same beloved, sincere guy from 40 years back. The sequel dominated Netflix for nearly 2 weeks, racking up 41 million views in just 5 days, which is incredible for a 40-year-old franchise. Reinhold loved returning to this part. He intentionally made Billy a bit tougher and less naive, though the character's recognizable charm stays the same. Getting back together with Murphy and the old gang was a purely joyful experience that he finds hard to even describe. It's genuinely touching that 4 decades have passed since the original movie debuted, and the massive audience that tuned in on Netflix has likely been carrying these characters in their hearts for their entire adult lives. After spending a good chunk of the 90s waiting for a callback, the massive success of Axel F provided the ultimate validation. Sadly, it served as the final curtain call for John Ashton, the man who brought Taggart to life in 3 of the films. Though he skipped the third flick in 1994, he came back for one last ride as our favourite grumpy cop before passing away from cancer. He left us on September 26, 2024 in Colorado, while Reinhold himself is now 67 years old. He lives a quiet, meaningful life in Little Rock with Amy and their 12-year-old daughter, Haley Rose, far away from the Hollywood machine, finding a sense of belonging and community in the heartland that the movie business could never offer him. Amy's roots lie in Little Rock, a place Reinhold has truly embraced as his own. He speaks fondly of the local makers, creators, and everyday heroes who keep the community humming without seeking fame. He often credits his father-in-law's view on Arkansas, where trust is simply the local standard. In LA, you're constantly scouting for the few who'll burn you, a mindset that shaped his early outlook. Meanwhile, his mother, Regina Celeste, reached the incredible milestone of 100 years before passing in 2023. Since 1987, he has maintained his standing within the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. With over 75 credits to his name, his career reflects a relentless work ethic that never wavered, even when the limelight dimmed. Both Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Beverly Hills Cop have been immortalized in the National Film Registry for their cultural impact. He traded serving frozen treats to Angie Dickinson in Brentwood for a spot as one of the most iconic stars of the 1980s. His journey was a roller coaster of massive success, hard falls, and a steady rebuild fueled by new priorities. This transformation was guided by the woman he met in a Los Angeles parking lot back in the late 1990s. Some prefer to frame his life as a warning, a meteor that flared up and crashed due to a difficult reputation and tabloid drama. Yet, that cynical narrative ignores the reality of his time in Santa Fe, including the heavy costs and the healing it provided. It overlooks his family life in Arkansas, his Emmy nod, and that hilarious self-aware turn on Arrested Development. We still laugh at his close talk a bit from Seinfeld, and just recently, his return drew 41 million streams in 5 days. 40 years after the original smashed box office records, he suited up as Billy Rosewood again in 2024, and the nostalgia felt like coming home. That's the real legacy of Judge Reinhold, a superstar who crashed, learned his lessons, and emerged as a grounded, better man without the Hollywood ego. If this story resonated with you, show some love by hitting like and subscribing. We've got plenty more deep dives coming, so don't miss out. See you next time.